rocks and the mountain peaks, underground against the stream. If darkness does chase me, I found my way to God's country.
Hey folks, welcome back to the Peaceful Way podcast. Just wanted to do a little dispatch here. I thought this would be an interesting topic. I've been seeing floating around a lot of arguments about the current situation in Israel, between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. So what's the sort of setup for this is what a lot of the claims have been mostly from sort of the left side politically of the aisle, the more progressive, but not exclusively. There are people on the right as well, but they've been describing the situation in the Gaza Strip, what Israel is doing, as a genocide. So you'll hear that it's almost like just especially by progressive, they're talking about it very matter-of-factly, like the ongoing genocide in Gaza and things like that. I thought it would be kind of an interesting thing to explore about, even what a genocide is, what constitutes a genocide. How do we use that word? And I think it's certainly interesting the way certain people use it. It's not even that new of a word. It was coined in the 20th century, and are people throwing it around too flippantly, or are people not actually, or should other people be using it more so? Or they're not willing to jump to the genocide word, the G word. Myself personally, I have avoided calling it a genocide so far, but I'll explain what I mean as we go on here. But I am a little cautious about using the word, but that doesn't mean I don't think what is going on is horrible. I think that actually what Israel is almost certainly committing horrible atrocities and war crimes, and not just from their their very vicious bombing campaign. They've dropped more megatons of TNT than were dropped on Japan, I believe, or close to, in the last few weeks of World War II. So it's just like, it is absolutely insane, the response that Israel is having here. They are literally turning Gaza into rubble. They're glassing the place. And then not to mention just the bombing campaigns, but also the starvation blockade. We're at the point now, a few weeks into this conflict, where the starvation is starting to settle in. The people who are the weakest, mostly elderly and children and sick, are going to start dying first. Also, the diseases will begin to spread because of lack of adequate sanitary living conditions. And also your immune system just begins to break down when you're not eating. So even a typical flu can kill you when you're that nutritionally compromised. But anyways, even though I'm not totally jumping to the word genocide, I think what is going on is just horrific atrocities, war crimes. It is not acceptable in any way, shape, or form what Israel is doing to. It is what it is. Certainly is an ethnic cleansing campaign, and I think it is just completely detestable. So that's my position on that, and I know that can be like a polarizing position. It seems people have very, very strong feelings about this current war. And I definitely see a lot of people on the right who are very willing to excuse Israel's actions, not just post October 7th, with the horrific terrorist attack by Hamas on innocent civilians, but even all the events leading up to October 7th. Israel has not been an honest actor in all this. The Israeli government, they've certainly they've been embroiled in their own political dynamics that have sort of forced them into a position where they have to be this vicious. But not to get too deep into that side of the issue. Let's get back to genocide, right? So I've seen a lot of people are claiming genocide, and then what I've seen is a response that, especially on Twitter, I've seen like guys like Ben Shapiro, James Lindsay, these sort of like more on the right conservative figures who seem to, again, want to defend Israel and the Israeli government at pretty much every turn, and there's no action unjustifiable, basically, in their minds that they could commit in what they're doing right now. But I've seen them sort of rebut the claim of genocide, basically pointing out that Gaza's population over the past, ever since the borders in Gaza were drawn, has been exploding and growing much faster than the Israeli population, at a much faster clip anyway. And so the sort of claim is that, well, you can't call it a genocide because their population is growing. Look how fast. Would you call this a genocide? How can this be a genocide if their population is growing this fast? Ha ha ha, right? And first of all, wrong. that is not correct. So let's get into our definitions of what is a genocide. First of all, there's nothing in a given like politically defined region or geographically defined region, there's no rule that says if your population is still growing, that means a genocide. Okay, that is not true. You could still, the Armenian population was still growing during the Armenian genocide, despite they did experience a genocide. 125 to 100, maybe even 200,000, as high as people were killed, and we all call that. Most of us accept that it was a genocide, despite the fact that their population was still growing over that period. So let's define our terms, right? What is a genocide? And it actually isn't as simple as most people think. There are some events that we think are genocides, but they're actually not technically a genocide. And there are some events that we don't think about as a genocide that are actually a genocide, right? So again, it also depends on who's defining the genocide. My own country, Canada, did not recognize the Holodomor in Ukraine, which was Stalin's terror famine that he committed in Ukraine. I believe it was in the maybe late 20s or early 30s, and numbers range from 3 to 6 million people died in the Holodomor. Now, my country, Canada, did not recognize that as a genocide until 2008. This was like 85 years after the events actually took place, right? So this was like a long, long time. For 85 years, they said it wasn't a genocide. It was just, and there are still shockingly Marxist revisionist historians who will argue that it was just that the Holodomor, not as many, it's similar to like Holocaust denialism. It's like not as many people died in the Holodomor as they say. It's mostly Western propaganda, and it was an accident. It wasn't. No one intentionally starved them. It was poorly managed or something like that, right? And no, that is absolutely not true. Especially since the fall of the USSR, we've had many records have been opened up in Moscow where we have discovered many of the crimes that the Soviets committed, especially in Ukraine. And it was absolutely a genocide. I think it's like beyond the shadow of a doubt in my mind. Not to get into debate about that here, but yeah, it's just to point out, like, you know, Canada and many other countries didn't recognize the Holodomor as a genocide until much, much later. And I'll even point this out. So the genocide label is heavily politicized and it is arbitrarily applied. And so the case in point on the Holodomor, prior to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, only 17 nations officially categorized the Holodomor as a genocide. In most cases, many decades after the event, and only because of pressure from large Ukrainian diaspora communities. After February 24th, 2022, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, all of a sudden, 18 more countries, so more than double the number of countries recognizing the Holodomor as a genocide, all of a sudden had a come to Jesus moment and a change of heart. And they all officially recognize the Holodomor as a genocide, right? So clearly this is a point where the genocide label is being applied politically and not because it actually occurred, right? So I would just want to point that out, that the whole term is like heavily is used as a political cudgel. And this is sort of part of my case where I'm building up to why I don't always love using the term genocide, though it is a useful term, to be clear. It's a useful term to describe something that's more than just, you know, deaths in a war, or more than just mass killings or collateral damage. It's like a very intentional killing of civilians. Anyways, okay, so moving on, just to show how this is politicized. More often than not, most countries, out of political expediency, will recognize genocide despite there being, they will not recognize genocide despite there being overwhelming evidence of the offending country committing one. One example, of the top 10 trading partners of Turkey, not one of them recognizes the Armenian genocide. As I mentioned before, talking about the Armenian genocide, Turkey has also been known to lobby the U.S. government to stop them from broaching the topic, and will throw a temper tantrum every time some random U.S. congressperson brings up the Armenian genocide, right? And Turkey, because it was the Ottoman Turks at the time, they committed the genocide against the Armenians. It is like very important to them that no one recognizes it. Their crimes that they absolutely committed, again, is another one of those cases where I think there's more than enough evidence for that they committed a genocide, right, against the Armenians. So like a lot of people will abstain from recognizing something as a lot of countries will abstain from recognizing genocides where they actually did occur. And then the opposite is true. They'll recognize genocides where maybe they didn't occur, or for political reasons when they're no longer friendly with the country. And I get why countries, for them, it's not worth the political hassle, especially if it's a big trading partner, to like make these sort of like, I don't know, grandstanding symbolic gestures about the sins that they've committed in the past. Like why harm your trading relationship, right? Like that may be a good gesture, but it doesn't help your people or your country right now. Right now, having like more trade with other nations helps your people and your country and helps you be more wealthy. So why like rock the boat? I actually get that sort of that reasoning, that logic, but like let's also be clear that the oftentimes the recognition of genocides are purely political in nature. Like they're not like something that is is a group of like experts get together, and then a panel, some sort of recognized panel, declares something a genocide. It's like when a country decides they want to declare it a genocide. That's when it is. Now, the dictionary definition of a genocide, I'll just go over it here, is it's the deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group. So that's like the dictionary definition. Now I will go over the UN definition, and just to set up for this. So it was actually a guy in the UN, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was the one who coined the term and wanted this category of mass killing to be like part of the UN's charter, so that like we could delineate between like crimes, right? So it really was like the UN who initially pushed for recognizing genocides. The UN definition, according to the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, Article 2, this is their definition. In the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. Number 1, killing members of the group. Number 2, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. Number 3, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. Imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. So number 3, inflicting on the group conditions of life. So that'd be like starvation blockades, like what Stalin did in the Holodomor. That's why we call it, even if it wasn't 6 million mass executions, it was a starvation blockade intended to kill that many people. Imposing measures intended to prevent births within a group. That would be like forced sterilization, which have been done. So it doesn't necessarily have to be killing to be considered a genocide. You could forcefully sterilize a group of people, and that could be considered a genocide. Forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. So, orphaning them and putting them in orphanages, and kind of destroy. That would also slowly destroy the culture and national identity of the group to which those children belonged. So that could be considered a genocide too. So again, it doesn't always have to be like violent death. It can't, according to the UN definition, which they are the ones who invented this term, that those things could also count as a genocide. The UN has also, again, going back to the question of is Israel committing a genocide? I don't know. It seems to me like if they aren't already there, they're getting awfully damn close to fitting the textbook definition of a genocide by what they're doing in the Gaza Strip. And a genocide also, we have to separate it. It is actually categorically different from a Holocaust. So again, going back to this, well, why is their population growing if they're getting genocided? A genocide doesn't necessarily mean eliminating an entire ethnic population. It is often employed to displace or remove a population from a certain area. That is what fits a genocide. The intent to intentionally eradicate an ethnic group or identity, religious group or identity, whatever it be, is actually, that would actually be the definition of a Holocaust. So that is a categorically different thing than a genocide. And it is a categorically even worse thing than most of us think there's nothing worse than a genocide. There actually is. It's called a Holocaust. Obviously this was Hitler and Goebbels. Their final solution was to commit a Holocaust of German Jews. I think that it is an important distinction to make, because I think a lot of people are perhaps getting confused on this point, because just a linguistic language thing. Like people think Holocaust, they think they think the Holocaust, right? So that's what the Germans did to the Jews near the end of World War II, and that's but a Holocaust isn't just a single event. It can be any event in which one group tries to eradicate another group from the face of the earth. So that is, I think it's an important distinction to make between a Holocaust and a genocide. Genocides don't necessarily have to be eradicating an entire group from the face of the planet, right? Also, just to like point out too that the UN has like categorized, even in recent years, like what ISIS has done in Syria. They've actually wiped out some towns and killed, like, one instance was I think 7,000 people, and another instance was 11,000 people. And the UN and most countries have actually recognized that as a genocide. And we typically don't think anything sub 100,000 deaths is a genocide, or sub 50,000 deaths, or whatever. Those are kind of arbitrary, right? But it did fit. If you look at those situations, what ISIS was doing, it totally fit what is the textbook definition of a genocide. So, if we go back to the Israel-Gaza situation, I think clearly more people. Even from the official Palestinian government, Hamas government statistics, you don't have to trust those by all means. But I mean, just look at the pictures, right? We know it's a humanitarian catastrophe. There's no way that it is anything less than tens of thousands of people are dead in this. Innocent people who are not necessarily involved in the war. And we know Israel has also been shopping around the idea to basically ship the remaining Gazans off to different countries. So they want to send, I've seen plans leaked that they want to send like 500,000 to Turkey and 1 million to Egypt and 250,000 to Iraq and stuff like this. And they're trying to shop around to other countries, and actually allegedly America is going to help pay for this relocation, right? So this is ethnic cleansing. That is what they're doing. They're ethnically cleansing the more than 2 million people who are living in the Gaza Strip, which, in my view, it is their land. I'm sorry to say, Israel has not been able to make nice, and they have made the situation worse for themselves. I believe, but and that doesn't eliminate the Palestinians' culpability in all of it either. The Palestinians haven't exactly had the best people to represent their interests. And they've committed war crimes themselves. There's no doubt about that. But what Israel is doing is there's ethnic cleansing going on. There's starvation blockades. I've even seen there in the Knesset, that is like Israel's parliament essentially. I've seen members of the Knesset stand up and give speeches just condemning that 3-day ceasefire that Israel had to allow humanitarian aid in. And they were just openly saying that, well, we need to send, this is so wrong because we need to send a message to all the Gazans, all the Palestinians, that they will starve to death, and they will watch their children starve to death if they don't submit, right? And I mean, just like the insanity of some of these politicians who can actually utter this demonic nonsense just openly like that, to just completely with a clear genocidal intent. I think it is just like it's very antichrist and demonic in nature to feel that way. In my view, I think people are definitely being influenced by something demonic. I don't know how you could feel that way again about innocent civilians without being influenced by something more sinister. Anyways, so yeah, that's just like laying out the case. So is Israel committing a genocide? That may not be determined officially until after the war is over. I think they are certainly committing, again, to reiterate, they are committing mass murder, atrocities, starvation, blockades, and ethnic cleansing. It is, to me, it's pretty despicable what they're doing. It's I think just to not recognize the humanity of the Palestinians and how, they are actually human beings. They're not just like animals to be put down or to be pests to be removed from the area. Anyways, that's sort of like some of my thoughts on it. I probably have hopefully added a little more nuance into the whole genocide question. What is a genocide? What constitutes a genocide? And that it's not exactly as black and white as people want to believe. There's also, I've even seen many different scholars. There's actually quite a debate about genocide. And some people want to expand the definition, and some people want to restrict the definition and make it more narrow, what constitutes a genocide. And again, it becomes a big debate within like the law community and whatnot, because it is so political, right? Because it actually, most countries have like laws on their books in terms of like war crimes and stuff. If you are convicted of committing a genocide, there's all sorts of repercussions to that, right? It's not just a bad reputation. It's like you can get pretty heavy sanctions. Countries can even justify going to war against you if you're committing a genocide. So there's all sorts of repercussions that come with that legal definition. And it's not as cut and dry or black and white as people want to think, or the way that people are debating it on Twitter or /X. So I just wanted to kind of throw that into the mix. And if you had any thoughts, definitely reach out to me. I'm mostly on X or Facebook. You can also email me at the peacefulwaypodcast@gmail.com. Or you can DM me or send me a message on X. Just look up The Peaceful Way or Jordan Taylor on X. Anyways, also rate and review the show. Help me get more into more people's ears. That would be pretty cool. Thanks. Have a good day.